This is better than going to sleep though.
Should have given you an A minus.
No. I was actually surprised you round up.
Good.
Oh, we're good?
Okay.
All right. Snail. Oh. Wait.
Come back.
All right, ready to go.
Slug.
Slug.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sadhana Chimla-Murray, and we are back for another episode of Slug Entrepreneur. And here we have another one of our CEOs. This is Mr. Brian Hoang. He is the co-founder and also the former CEO of SURVIVR, as well as he is an adjunct professor here at UT Dallas, as well as an entrepreneur in residence here at UT Dallas. And so, Mr. Brian, before we begin, can I ask you if you could introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about yourself, just so they know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Brian Hoang. I hate introductions, but the short story is I went to school here at UT Dallas back in the day, majored in software engineering. Turns out I really didn't enjoy that, so I decided to go to Plan B, which was become a CEO. And but basically, I never intended to be a CEO. That's not really what I grew up dreaming about what I'd be. I thought I would just become an engineer, and so it was never that I was setting out to become a CEO. It was just one thing led to another. I decided to start some student organizations on campus because I thought it would be fun, and that was my first experience with leadership. And it turned out that, hey, I actually really enjoy this, and I think I'm kind of good at it. And I just let myself be curious and pursue whatever I thought I was interested in. One thing led to another. Started my first company here, met my co-founder, and the rest is history. We turned it into a company called SURVIVR, grew it over the next few years, so I guess 5 years total, if you consider the whole timeline. But we had customers, we did virtual reality training for police and military, and so we had customers across 10 states, from local police departments to even universities, military police, and Air Force, Department of Homeland Security. 2.5 years ago, sold it to a private equity firm in this space. I stayed on for 2 years as director and then vice president over all of the products, and left on my second anniversary to move on to my second company. And also for fun, like you said, I teach a course here called Startup Launch, and as you would know, as a former student, it's a very rigorous real-world course that I've designed to mimic pursuing a real-world idea as best as possible. So that's the short story.
Nice. And so before you began, when you started talking, you talked about how before you weren't confident that you would be an entrepreneur. Like that wasn't something you were like planning for, right? What was that aha moment that you were kind of went through that made you go, oh, maybe being an entrepreneur doesn't sound too bad?
I think for me, it was a very gradual process. I don't think there was really a singular aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was just really good. Like I mentioned before, I was good at letting myself be curious and explore freely,
Mm-hmm.
but I was also really good at paying attention to myself and how I really felt deep down, not how I wanted to feel.
Okay.
And it's just a lot of observing over a few years. Like for example, I had 3 software engineering internships from small local semiconductor companies. Like I think they had maybe 30 employees to mid-sized 300 employee consulting firm to Raytheon. So I kind of got a good sample of internships, but I did notice that I just hated every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't enjoy being a cog in the machine, getting to work on just a small part of a big picture,
Mm-hmm.
not getting to choose the team I work with and the impact I have. And it just felt like I was sitting in a room bored for listening to my own blood flow for 8 hours a day. And I had the willingness to look at myself in the mirror one day and say, this is not how the rest of my life can go. This isn't how it should feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then, conversely, whenever I started doing this leadership stuff, student orgs, and then kind of stumbled into my first company here at college, I just realized over time that, if this feels really effortless in the sense that I don't have to try to do work. I just do it because I love it. I can work late nights, like just straight into the night, into the morning, and then jump out of bed excited every day. I love the team I was working with and the impact I had, and I realized these are two completely opposite reactions, and so I kind of just leaned into that a little bit more, and over time just turns out that I was right in listening to myself, and I just followed where I was having the most fun, and also ideally it's not just you having fun, it's you do well at it too.
Yeah.
So
one of your first companies, SURVIVR, right? What actually influenced you to look into that problem, or like what led to the creation of SURVIVR?
So the longer history is that my first company was back in 2016. We called it Emosis. Because it was just my co-founder and I. We were just two nerds from the computer science school, like messing around with virtual reality products, like games and stuff, and taking them out to parties and having fun. So like Emosis, IMM stand from immersion, VR.
Yeah.
And then osis meaning condition of, like hypnosis. So emosis, we're like, a condition of being immersed. And so we did that for a while. We didn't intend to turn it into a business. We were just trying to have fun,
right,
and mess around with stuff. A year later, 2017, I thought, revenue would actually be kind of nice, and maybe we should look at making this into a real business. And so, but we didn't have any immediate product ideas. And what I tell like the class all the time is that you can't just jump into a product idea for the sake of doing it. It's not a process that can be rushed, otherwise you're going to be too emotional. You're going to invest in an idea that really shouldn't have passed the round of diligence in the first place. And that's just going to lead to a lot of frustration and heartburn down the line. And so we said, maybe we do want to work on a product idea at some point, but we don't have any ideas right now. It's not like we had any former expertise to lean on as students. So I said, okay, well, why don't we just do consulting in the meantime? Buy us time. We have a team, a skill set, a portfolio that for a technology that's nascent, but people are becoming more educated about virtual reality and also augmented reality. And so let's just try to find business clients that want to build something with this technology, and we just help them build it because talent out there for this is scarce. Again, it's a newer technology, right, especially back then, like 2017, back when you still had primarily just tethered, like wired headsets.
Right.
So we did that. I just spent the whole year skipping class and driving around the state and going to as many conferences and speaking events as I could, just to build up my network and relationships. Closed about $150,000 in services contracts that year. And then finally, to answer your question, so we fast forward, we did not enjoy doing consulting. I have friends who love consulting. I was not one. I'm not of the same mindset. I much prefer a product. Build something once. That's a product that's ours, revolved around a core mission that can also scale easily with the customer base and our sales team. And so what happened was basically one day we met a retired police officer. And he also happened to have a radio show of his too as a hobby, kind of like this.
Okay.
And so a mutual friend connected us, and we said, okay, yeah, sure, we'll come on the radio show. And so we did that, and we said, hey, you got to go try our technology sometime. So we brought him into our office after, let him play on a headset. I think we ran him to a zombie game or something. And he said, oh my God, like that was so immersive. They were all up on my face. Have you considered using this for police training? And we were kind of like, well, what do you mean by that? And he starts to open up about all the limitations of current forms of police training, and I can get into that later if you want, but basically I said, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I did more research into the market. In general, I saw a business opportunity. It wasn't flooded with competitors either. And so we just decided to start experimenting with it really slowly, made a quick prototype. We entered the Big Idea competition here at UT Dallas. That was 2018. 264 startup applicants that year, and we won first.
Nice.
And
Congratulations.
thanks. And so, got that and 25K, and we were like, maybe there's something here. Let's just see this through and see where it ends up, and the rest is history.
So you didn't start, did you start selling it before the Big Idea competition, or was that after?
No, I think we had the idea for maybe about a month prior to applying for the Big Idea competition or something like that. So when we were competing, we had no revenue to speak to, but so the semifinalists did have revenue, or at least clients they claimed. No one's going to verify the authenticity of this information during the pitch competition, but we definitely didn't have revenue to show for it. We were too early.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay, so you would say that one of the most important things is team itself.
Oh yeah, always.
Okay, so like you mentioned, team is important. What led you to meet your team members, and what do you think made you develop a good team, I guess? How does that process work?
Yeah, I met my co-founder here. I think that probably was. I think that was in 2016.
Okay.
And it was from a mutual friend. So I started the AI organization here on campus, and then I was about to start the one for virtual reality as well. And one of my officers from the AI org said, "Hey, I know a guy he's like all in on VR. He works at the research lab for it, so he's brilliant. You need to meet him," because he knew I was looking for officers. I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I remember we didn't we didn't find out about this until like way later on. But when my co-founder and I, we were interviewed separately, and we were asked to describe our first encounter, which was that interview where I went to meet him for the first time. And, discuss him joining the club, and both of our answers, again, like these were one-on-one interviews. We did not coordinate whatsoever. We were not in the same room. Both of our answers were, I found him to be kind of intimidating.
Really?
So,
okay.
So that was really funny, but yeah, mutual friend, and also just here at UT Dallas, we have a good business and engineering school. You could definitely find your potential co-founder here if you look hard enough. And I think we just got really lucky. It's just one of those things that, in retrospect, it's like it really should not have worked, and the fact that it did, despite all odds, maybe it's just a sign that it was meant to be. Yeah. Because when we decided to formally start working together on this first company, we had known each other for like a month, like 1 month. Okay. And I remember my first mentor here was Brian Chambers. He was the director of the Blackstone Launchpad, the first one. And I was in his office saying, "Hey, you do startup stuff, right? Well, I'm thinking of starting this thing with this co-founder, and can you help me draft a simple agreement for us?" And he said, "Okay, sure." And so I'm in his office. We're working on his agreement. And he asked, "So how long have you known this guy?" And I'm like, I've never done this before. I'm super naive. So like in the most naive, optimistic way possible, I said, "Yeah, about a month." And he just kind of stared at me like I was being really stupid. He's like, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I know I've only known him a month, but he seems like a good enough guy. He seems smart. Yeah, I think we can do this." And he's like totally doubting me this whole time. But he's like, "All right, well, let's just keep working on the agreement." And I've just seen over the years, I've seen so many founding teams just implode somehow for one reason or another. And it's a lot of times it's not obvious until it happens, because team's not going to go on LinkedIn and be like, "Man, I'm having this argument with my co-founder." You'd only say good things on LinkedIn. So only when I have like a one-on-one with somebody and they start ranting to me, or you hear an announcement of a departure, do you find out that, oh, there were issues underneath that weren't obvious on the surface.
Right.
And a lot of founding teams just don't work out. And the fact that ours did, and just with having only known each other for a month and having not really much prior experience at all, being our first startup in school, everything on paper suggests that really should not have worked, but we got lucky.
Nice. And so for the people watching, like the entrepreneurs, if you were gonna start a company again with like new co-founders, what are some of the main things that you would look for?
I have started a new company. I'm on a second company right now. I'm not ready to publicly broadcast it yet, but I have two co-founders this time. One of them is my prior co-founder, so he has returned. He was then Chief Technology Officer, now he's Chief Product Officer for this one.
Okay.
My second co-founder is the Chief Technology Officer, and he was one of my top mentors for my last company. So I've known him since 2020. We met in Techstars when I was part of the Austin cohort for 2019, 2020, and he was one of the mentors. And sometimes you meet with somebody and it just clicks in a way that you can't really comprehend, and it's just something deep inside you is like, I don't know what it is exactly, but I just vibe with this person way more than I do with the usual person I meet, and so I don't know why, but I just feel compelled to make this relationship work and to never let you go, and that's how I felt about him. The number of people I felt that with, I can probably count on like two hands.
Right.
And I knew someday I'm gonna convince him to work with me. But with executive recruiting, one of the principles you have to understand is that timing is one of the most important factors to consider. If the timing lines up perfectly between both parties, then there's a chance that everything else can fall into place, even if you can't pay market rate. If they're driven by the right things and there's an alignment, then as long as the timing works, then you can go in and for the kill. And for me, it took 3 years. I think we went over the 4 C's of co-founders. It was kind of high level, but character is number one. I'd say don't ever compromise on integrity, on ethics and morals. Make sure that you're aligned on your core values, not just as a company, but as people, as human beings.
Right.
Do you trust this person to do the right thing when it matters? And I guess perhaps even when it doesn't matter.
Okay, so another question that I had in terms of the actual product itself, can you give me a small summary of what SURVIVR was?
Yep, we built virtual reality training simulators for police and military. So training everything from use of force discretion. So our stuff came with not just the virtual reality hardware, but also custom built hardware that simulates a full duty belt for the officer. So everything from less lethals, such as pepper spray and batons and tasers, to lethal force options, including handguns, rifles. So use of force discretion to communication and de-escalation skills, which is arguably the most important part of the simulator. Because at the time, most police training simulators out there were basically, if you just imagine a giant screen like a projector or on the wall, and they just project these videos on this giant screen.
Okay.
And the video by definition plays from start to end. It doesn't care what you say or what you do. Like, if you ever tried talking to a YouTube video, like, go ahead and talk to this video right now. I'm not going to respond to what you say, what you do. It's exactly like that.
Okay.
So therefore, these training scenarios are very pre-scripted.
Okay.
At some point, they can branch. Like, the operator can choose, okay, is the suspect going to get off the couch and step forward and threaten, or are they gonna chill out and say, all right, I'll comply? So there's a little bit of that, but you have just a few branching points, and the rest of it's still all videos that will play sequentially.
Okay.
So you can't really train for communication and de-escalation well with those kinds of simulators, because again, they're not responsive, they're not dynamic, so it feels very awkward. I've done it, I've tried it, it feels so awkward. And they're also just not repeatable. You play through a scenario once a video, you basically know how it's going to end if you try to run through the same simulation again. And so it loses its utility very quickly.
Okay.
So we wanted to build the first simulator that was the complete opposite, where you can build any training scenario you want from the bottom up, from scratch. Whether it's a traffic stop or a domestic violence incident or an active shooter at a local elementary school, like anything, any scenario you can imagine, you could build in our simulator. And for the first time, it was a truly dynamic training experience where you had no idea, as a trainee, as an officer with the headset on, you have no idea what somebody is going to say, what someone's going to do, if you're going to get ambushed at a certain point.
Right.
It's all fluid, so you're thinking on your feet the entire time, which was a very new kind of training experience for officers. And it was, the training simulation was available for them 24/7, 365, so they wouldn't have to wait until their annual training, which you can only run through a few basic scenarios with that. So it's making high quality training more accessible and giving them a means to practice de-escalation in an effective way.
Okay. So from what I've heard, the company has been acquired, right? How was that acquisition process?
Yeah, so in short, it was a 50-day process, it was a very hardcore. It was just so much diligence that was done. Like we had to dig up every contract that we've ever signed, and then they like really dug into the product. The lawyers and their executive team had a million questions that we had to answer. But yeah, I think the broader process, when I said 50 days, I mean from the moment that we received the letter of intent to closing the deal, that was 50 days. But then there's this whole period beforehand where it's kind of like the dating phase, where you don't just meet a company one day and say, all right, I'm going to buy you, here's a letter. You kind of like get to know each other over time and understand the strategic vision on both sides, whether there's alignment there. Do you like the team? So how can you see a future together? Things like that. And steadily those conversations might progress to something more concrete. Sometimes it starts as just a partnership to test the waters, to work together in a more formal capacity, and then it might switch over to a mergers or acquisitions kind of conversation. Or sometimes you just kind of date and then they say, hey, what did we just buy you guys? And then you go straight there. So it can happen in a lot of different ways, but generally at some point, if you're trying to go through an acquisition, you would want a letter of intent.
Right.
And that typically will grant a period of exclusivity. So it's like, okay, there's going to be this amount of time where they're going to conduct due diligence, and we can't agree to an LOI from anyone else.
Oh, okay.
So that's the exclusivity part.
Right.
And then there's a lot of them digging to verify whether there are any skeletons in the closet. They're going through the financials and make sure we didn't sign any contract terms that we should not have agreed to. And then if we pass that, then the final stretch is going to be the legal documentation part, which is still a gruesome process. It's our counsel and an opposing counsel just going back and forth with a million questions, trying to draft up a purchase agreement among other documents. So assuming you make it through that and you have the final agreement, everyone's still good to go, then they send this huge packet out for a signature, and then you schedule a meeting with the leadership from both sides are on the call, as well as the legal counsel on both sides are on the call, and then they basically declare that all documents have been fully executed. This acquisition is now closed, and just like that, and there you go, your company has been sold. And it's a very surreal moment.
Yeah.
And eventually I built up my advisory board as well, which is like mentors but on steroids, and they're compensated.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, one of the best things I've done, and really every successful founder is gonna have at least one key mentor by their side.
Good, got you. So kind of going into like how you were a student when you became an entrepreneur, right? Your first business idea. How was it juggling like schoolwork as well as also doing the business side of it? You mentioned you went to conferences like every other day and stuff like that. How was that process for you?
Okay, the trick is to don't do the schoolwork and skip class. I shouldn't say that as faculty, but I tell my students all the time, you can skip whatever class you want except mine.
Okay.
But yeah, it comes down to I had to realize that I was always a really good student. I graduated fourth in high school. At UT Dallas, I had a 3.9. I was commencement speaker.
Nice.
But so I was always programmed to be a good student. That was my default behavior and mindset.
Okay.
And I had to really break myself out of that and understand that ultimately, if I care about this business, then the only thing that matters is, do I execute or do I not? The business doesn't care about my personal circumstances. It doesn't care that I'm a student or that I'm stressed some days.
Right.
It's either you execute or you don't.
Right.
And if you really care enough about pursuing this business and becoming an entrepreneur for real, then what are you willing to let get in your way?
Right.
And for me, I had to make the decision that I want to do fine in academics, but I'm not going to let that get in my way. I will skip whatever classes I have to, as long as I pass, which is easy.
Yeah.
And I think, a practical tip there is I would try to build good relationships with my professors early on, and at the beginning of the semester.
Okay.
I think it helps too that at that point, more people around campus were starting to know me and the company and what we were doing.
So one more question, kind of. So when you first started your business, I've spoken to a few of your co-founders, right? And I think almost all of them have said you were like a really great CEO.
Oh.
they definitely all did, right? And so I want to ask you, what do you think is an important trait that a CEO should have?
I don't think I bribed them to say that, but
no, they all did. They all said you were a great CEO.
I'm learning. What makes?
Did I put you on the spot there?
No, it's a good question. There are just so many things that I'm not sure if I could only pick one.
I'd like a top 5.
I would say one of the most important skill you can have as CEO is the ability to sell, to communicate, to convey a vision to an audience and convince them to believe in you and your vision as much as you do, if not more. And by selling, I don't mean just customers. The audience could also include investors, prospective employees, executives, advisors, mentors, partners, your own family,
right.
Whatever it may be. It's that process of articulating your vision in an effective way that sways other parties to join your side. That's going to be really important from a fundraising standpoint, because you have to keep the company capitalized, from a hiring standpoint because you have to build the best team that you can get.
Right.
Customers, obviously, you need revenue has to come from somewhere,
right?
And why are they going to take a chance on a new company and founder when it's probably going to be super unstable? Convince them no matter what the hesitations are, and there is some science to it, but again, it's largely an art, and I think it does come down to what your personality is as well and your communication style.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we have the whole that really rigorous pitch part of the semester. That final month was all pitch practice, just nonstop Shark Tank and just picking apart everybody's pitch, tearing them down, and then building them back together. And it's all to practice that. Can you communicate the fundamentals of your business in an effective way?
Right.
That's clear and inspiring.
So you say it's an art, so I'm assuming it's something you learn over time, right? What do you think someone could practice to get good at, I guess, convincing or communicating your idea?
Yeah, so the process I use in my class, which is kind of similar to kind of like just your typical end of semester pitch, I guess, but so I provide the grading rubric early on, which says everything from problem solution, customer validation, down to like financial modeling, team, blah blah blah. So all the requirements I have for the pitch. That forces them to practice at least speaking to each topic.
Okay.
And I always say, if this is the default template, if in doubt, use this template.
Okay.
Especially if you haven't pitched before, this is a solid foundation to start. And it's a flow that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's logical, at least. And the art part comes in when you just have to practice a ton and get familiar with just being out there and talking about yourself and your vision. And over time, as you ideally become more comfortable with that, you start to experiment. Now you start to deviate from the standard template and experiment with a different flow. You kind of inject your own personality into it. And then you, over a long period of time, your pitches turn into you. They resemble you as a person, as a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me, that developed over years, and I'm still improving. I'm not perfect by any means.
Right. One more question. And so, in the entrepreneurial world, people usually say that CEOs are born, or are they made? That's like I feel like that's usually debated, right? Are CEOs born, or are they usually made? So I want to hear what your opinion on that is.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't know that I have a definitive answer for it, but in my personal experience, if I were to answer just based on myself, I wouldn't have said this several years ago, but I lean towards kind of born, I would say that, which is kind of ironic because I never grew up wanting to be an entrepreneur. It wasn't until like mid-college when I started these orgs for fun and I realized, oh, this might be a path for me. Let me explore that further.
Right.
But since a young age, there were certain characteristics I had that I can't really, I feel like I was always that way. I don't know that there was a point where I just learned it from somewhere, but I was always really competitive. I always had this drive to perform better and differently than others. And at the time growing up, mostly just grades and other stuff. But I had this certain level of defiance in the sense that not only did I want to be the best at what I did, but also I wanted to be really creative and kind of stray away from the pack and even school projects and do something in a really weird way that the rest of the class isn't gonna think of. So little things like that kind of just kept with me. Over time and my excitement to do bigger and better things, and so there's a big part of my personality that lends to being an entrepreneur. I just didn't realize it until much later on. So I guess in that sense, maybe born to an extent, but I'd say the other half is I did have to get molded into an entrepreneur, and then I had to have my mentors and my co-founders, that's the important thing, is that I met the right allies. And without them helping me bridge the rest of the gap, I don't know that I would have made it.
Yeah.
But that's a really hard one. I kind of feel like you sort of need both in a way. You have to make sure that you have the right personality and drive for it, because it takes someone like unhinged or insane to actually want to do this and do it well.
Yeah.
But there's, again, the other half of it where you're going to need the right allies to help carry you the rest of the way and help you grow,
Right.
to perform to where you and your team need you to be.
Okay. Some final kind of questions. As you're a teacher as well, so as someone in the entrepreneurship industry, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, I guess?
I would say, I'm gonna go against the grain. So I would not suggest quitting your job to pursue your new idea. I try to be pragmatic. If you're thinking about pursuing an idea, great, but I think it's reckless advice to say, yeah, okay, if you think this is interesting, go pursue your passions, quit your job, don't even think about it. I don't think that's very responsible advice to give.
Okay.
I'd say the most practical thing you can do is make sure that you understand your personal and financial constraints. If you have a lot of debt or you're taking care of a sick family member or something, you have to consider that first.
Yeah. Right.
You need to be in a good state of mind and a good solid enough financial standing to give your company the attention that it deserves. So make sure you're in a good spot there. And I wouldn't suggest quitting your company or quitting looking for a job wherever you are until your idea has been validated enough to where you can reasonably have enough conviction that this can go somewhere. And that level of validation is maybe different for everyone, but I'd say a certain degree of revenue is always a good start.
Okay, got you. And then one final question. For someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, what skill sets would you recommend they cultivate or try to grow?
Did I already answer the sales question? Yeah, I'm going to use the same answer for that.
Okay.
To be fair, it also kind of depends on what kind of founder you are, whether you're the technical founder or the CEO or perhaps both. But I think still there's an argument that no matter what, you have to build relationships, make sure you're able to convey your vision properly to everybody, customers, investors, advisors, prospective partners, employees. That is going to be the most important skill that you never have. So if you're not feeling confident, if your network is super dry, go out and fix that, yesterday.
Yeah, got you. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Brian Hoang, for joining us today. We learned so much about entrepreneurship. If y'all have any questions, please drop them down below and we'll ask him his questions for you. But thank you so much for joining us, and be back again next week for a similar video. Thank you so much. Yep, sales. Okay, great job. Let's go. Let's go. You did well.
That's not bad.
Yeah.